Welcome to Mr. Olsen's podcast. The Regicide in Lisbon. An article published in MrOlsen.com at Retro Hut section. February 1st, 1908 was marked by the attack against the Portuguese royal family. The regicide in Lisbon killed King Carlos I and the heir to the throne, the Royal Prince Luis Filipe. As they usually did, after the new year, the Portuguese royal family left the capital to their property and manor in Vila Viçosa. The first month of 1908 was spent hunting in the grounds, horseback riding, hiking among the cork oaks and capturing clichés that would illustrate the magazines of the time. The Portuguese royal family lived their last happy days in Vila Viçosa, surrounded by friends and warmly welcomed by the population. The kingdom was not calm. Economic and political crises followed one another. Portugal found itself involved in the intricate geopolitical game of the race to Africa, trying to secure its colonies through diplomacy. The issue of the English ultimatum, in which Portugal ceded vast African territories to the British, resulted in a serious financial crisis, in addition to an almost permanent governmental instability. By consequence, caused an irreversible erosion in the prestige of monarchical institutions, including the sovereign who had ascended to the throne less than a year ago, since, according to public opinion, they proved to be totally incapable of defending the country's interests. There was a muted threat in the air. People were unhappy, they were afraid and hungry, politicians did not understand each other, and meanwhile, the king hesitated while the government repressed. At the time, the almost miserable life of the Portuguese contrasted with the monarch's lifestyle, who participated in numerous social activities in which he coexisted only with the elites. The government of João Franco was unable to enforce the much-desired policy of new life. It sought to moralize by persecuting those who in some way expressed their disagreements, which, for the most part, came from the Republican side, and the press, living in times of exception, was censored. On January 28, 1908, several Republicans gathered, armed, next to the library elevator in Lisbon. Denounced, they were arrested and accused of conspiring against the government and the monarchy. 2 days later, King Carlos I received a visit from the Minister of Justice, who led him to sign a decree that provided for the deportation of prisoners from the library elevator coup. Considering the seriousness of the situation, the royal family returned to Lisbon on February 1st. They travelled through Alentejo region by train on a smooth journey, marked only by a small derailment near the Casabranca train station, which delayed their arrival to the Portuguese capital. After crossing the Tagus River on the steamer Don Luis, they were received at the river station by the infant Don Manuel, by some close relatives, friends, and by João Franco. Afterwards, they boarded coaches that paraded through the currently named Praça do Comércio. The cortege advanced parallel to the Tagus River, and cutting to the left, passed in front of the current Ministries of the Sea and Agriculture. Despite the winter, the afternoon of the 1st of February was calm, sunny, warm, and the Tagus River so clean that it looked like crystal. This idyllic setting came to an end just before the street of the Arsenal. Manuel Buissa, coming from the square with a rifle, shot at the carriage, and almost immediately, Alfredo Costa, who was on the other side of the carriage, also fired a revolver. During this shootout, the king fell and the royal prince was mortally wounded. Meanwhile, Queen Amelia struggled standing in the carriage, trying to save her husband and children. The royal escort was surprised. The coachman reacted and, as expected, took the carriage along the Arsenal's street, seeking refuge in the facilities of the Navy's arsenal. However, there was nothing more that could be done to save the victims of the attack, and the deaths were declared on the spot. The news of the king's death quickly spread throughout the city. It didn't take long for it to reach world capitals through the embassies, which reacted with shock, and the messages of grief did not take long to arrive, and, everywhere, funerals were organized in honor of the deceased. The same sentiment was shared by the correspondent of Le Matin in Lisbon, who said, I was struck, however, here, that the decree determining a great general mourning of 2 months seems only observed by the afflicted society or by persons who hold official positions. Guerra Junqueiro, regarding the regicide in Lisbon and in a letter sent to a Republican newspaper, anguished by the death of the prince, laments with dry eyes the death of the monarch, saying, "They didn't kill the king, he committed suicide. The king was a malevolent, disturbing monster, aware of 4 million creatures. If I could kill him secretly, from afar, from my bed, with my thoughts, I wouldn't kill him. For the truth, I have the courage to accuse. Perhaps, I'm not sure, I even had the courage to die. Killing, I would never kill." Some animosity of the population, mainly in urban areas, towards the monarchy becomes evident. One gets the impression that the king's inaccessibility did not allow for the creation of an empathic connection similar to the one that made his father, King Louis I, earn the epithet of the popular. However, what most affected the reputation of King Carlos I was the fact that he kept João Franco in power for too long. Infant Dom Manuel was slightly injured in the attack and was immediately proclaimed King of Portugal. In the diary of intimate notes that the new king began to write right after the events, we realize all his sadness, resentment, and attempt to understand everything that happened. He felt especially betrayed by João Franco, who had written him a letter saying that everything was calm, removing all fears. João Franco then wrote me a letter that I am deeply sorry to have torn up because, in that letter, he told me that everything was calm and that there was nothing to fear. What blindness! The first act of the new king, Dom Manuel II, was to dissolve the government of João Franco, appointing another, led by Ferreira do Amaral. Upon leaving the scene, João Franco fled to Paris, justifying his political failure and inability to protect the royal family, with his inability to predict the future. A process of reconciliation and pacification began through the annulment of the decree of deportation of the dissidents. An attempt was made to return to normality, although, today, we know that the monarchical chapter of Portugal was about to close. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Mr. Olsen's podcast, narrated by Beatrix, Mr. Olsen's AI assistant. See you soon for another episode.